Any questions from last time? Or from whichever time?
No.
Okay. So just a bit of recap. Last time we learned about this market definition, right? Market definition is extremely important, and I'm now involving in this drafting process of the new competition law for the energy sector, and this thing is going to be introduced in the energy sector as well, right? And I mean, we learned from the very first class that competition law is this Trade Competition Act is applicable to all industries, unless a specific industry has its own competition law. Energy industry is one of that, right? Is one of those industries that has its own regulator, and they are sort of brushing up and improving the competition regime now. So, and this market definition will be introduced for the very first time. I think once we finished the previous class, and I just had this idea that probably I could explain it in a much easier way by using much simpler example. So I'll give you that example now, just for recap purpose. All right. Okay, so what we learned last time was this CP case, but let's suppose that we talk about this much simpler. For example, if you have shop A, okay, shop A here, who sells banana, right? Who sells banana at Samyan, right? So the neighborhood is Samyan. And then the nearby neighborhood is, say, well, say a Siam Square, right? Siam Square. There's another shop which is selling banana as well, right? And suppose that these two shops would like to merge, or you would like to analyze if these two shops are too large already or not. In case that if one of these shop will decides that it will increase the price of banana, then that would affect the customers. So the question is, how would you draw the market here? I mean, from what we learned last time, what's the first thing that you might need to ask? Suppose that A and B want to merge, then what is the market definition? How would you define the market here? Can you tell? Okay, there are two approaches, right? There are two approaches to define the market. The first one is what?
To look at the product.
Okay, so the first one is product, right? So you can say that this market definition is okay, for the product. It is what?
Banana.
A banana, right? And what else? What else do you think you can include here? Suppose that you use the logic of a sniff test.
The price.
What do you mean? What do you mean by the price?
The price of the bananas in the two shops.
All right. So suppose you know the price of banana in shop A, and you have price of banana in shop B. Then what do you do with it?
You compare the two price, whether they are different from each other, like how different they are from each other.
Okay. What if I say that the price is essentially the same? Say like 50 baht per kilo, right? So what would you say? Could you conclude, because essentially maybe the price of my bottled water would be exactly the same as the price of candies, price of some loaf of bread as well, but I can't say that they are substitutable, right? Just the level.
You mentioned the sniff test. So yes. We need to use the elasticity test as well.
Okay. So what would you like to see from the relationship between two prices, in order to say that essentially they are, because what we want to say is we want to draw the market in which all products are to a certain extent substitutable, right? You say the banana from market A, from the shop A, essentially substitutable by banana from shop B.
So we want to see if, for example, if the banana price in shop A increase, will people go and buy from shop B instead?
Right. So you want to look back into the past, and whenever, let's say price of banana in 2000, say 2018, right? 2018, price of banana in 2018 increased. Then what happened? Then the demand, right? The demand of banana in shop B increased as well, right? In 2018. Let's say that this is like essentially the same period. So that will say something, right? That when the price of one thing increases and people just switch to buy another thing instead. And this is another level, right? You see the relationship between the price and demand. And elasticity is essentially just a tweaked version of it, right? Because elasticity is defined that, okay, you want to see what percentage of demand, sorry. Let's say that this is the change from 2018 to 2019, right? So you can calculate elasticity by, you have this price of banana in shop B in the year 2018, right? And you see that the price has changed in 2019, for example, right, for banana. from shop B as well in 2019. You see the difference here, and you want to know what is the baseline. You know, right? Because essentially you know that the baseline is what is the percentage of it to the baseline price, which is the price in 2018. So for this, you will get the percentage change of price. Oh, sorry, percentage change of demand of banana of shop B, right? This is the percentage change of demand for banana in shop B. And then that would be the numerator, right? And for the denominator, what do you need? For the denominator, you will need the change in terms of price, right? But this is a change in price of banana as well. But in shop A, right? You have it in 2019 as well. And this is banana in shop A in 2018. And you divide it by the price of banana in shop A in 2018. So this you will get the percentage change of price for banana in shop A, right? So here what you get is you get the elasticity of demand. But this is a spatial kind of elasticity where we call cross-price elasticity, because it tells you how big the impact, right? How big the impact is when there is a change in price of one shop, which is A. Right? Suppose the price of banana in shop A increases, then what would happen to the demand of banana in shop B? And if it is quite elastic, then you would expect that the value will be high or low.
High.
Right? High, right? Because essentially this thing with when you say that the value of something is high, I'm talking about an absolute value, right? Because it's good, but this is going to be positive anyway, because suppose as the price of banana at shop A increase, then the demand of another shop should be increasing as well, and given the nature that they are substitutable, right? But it is high in the sense that suppose that you change this just a little bit, right? You change the price just a tiny fraction, the demand changed substantially, then the value would be so high. And that says that the cross price elasticity is super high. It is so elastic, right? So if this is high, then it is elastic. And if the value going to zero, then it means that it is inelastic, because even if the price changes a lot, people just don't move to buy more banana from shop B, right? So this is the way that you prove it in practice. Okay, that's the elasticity, which exactly. I mean, if I may remind you that the definition of snip test, the snip test asks this thing, right? If the price of A increases by, for example, 10%, right? What would you go to buy? I mean, where would you go to buy the same product in state? Like, where else would you switch? Right? Where else would consumers switch to buy the same product elsewhere? Or maybe buy something else, right? If you say that the price of banana at shop A increases, then the question is, okay, what else would consumers buy, right? And in this case, if you say that, oh, actually people just buy a lot from banana from shop A, then that essentially you should increase banana from shop B in the same market as banana from shop A, right? That's the logic of snip test, right? It's like hypothetical, right? Hypothetically, if you increase the price of shop A, banana in shop A by 10%, then yeah, I mean, what sort of products that consumer will switch to. And in this case, if you can show this number, you can prove to a certain extent that people will switch to buy banana from Shopee, right? And the conclusion from this analysis is to say that banana from shop A should be included in the same market as banana from shop A, right? These bananas should be exactly in the same market definition. But it's not just banana, right? Maybe you can think about something else apart from banana. When the price of banana increased, what would you do? Would you switch to buy just banana from other shops, or would you switch to buy something else as well?
Well, if you change shops, then there will be a change in the products as well between two shops.
Right. So can you give me just one example of the things that you would buy instead of banana?
Well, I can buy like apple instead of banana.
Yeah, you can go to Apple as well, right? You can go for Apple. You don't have to. Sorry, let me use. You can go to for Apple as well, right? And I think the same logic would apply for um, B as well, right? It would apply to B as well, where you can buy Apple from Shopee as well. So now we have 4 products in the same market already, right? No, actually we have two products now that when you consider that they are substitutable, now the product is not banana, but the product definition now is banana and apple, right? So now you're expanding the scope of the market. Now you can say that we are considering the product market of banana and apple. And in this market, we have 2 players, right? Shop A and Shop B. But suppose that in the same, for example, or let's just set this neighborhood aside for now. But suppose that there might be some other shops around as well. Let's say here, sorry, not here, that is selling apple only, right? Apple only. So now because you define the market, right? You define the market as the market for banana and apple, and you say that apple and banana are essentially the same product. Then this player, this business entity, C, should be included in the same market as well, not just A and B. Right? Because, I mean, they are actually competing against each other. You can imagine if A and B increases their banana and apple prices, then people will just switch to buy apple from C. If that is the thing, then essentially it should include A, B, and C in the same market. But ignore the area, the neighborhood for now, right? So you would say well, there might be another kind of shop which is like, say, banana only, right? B sells only banana. Then you would say that, okay, D is supposed to be in the same market as well. And now you see the point, right? Why you want to sort of, if you are representing well, shop A or shop B, and you have to define the market, and you don't want to make yourself too powerful, I mean, in the eye of the commission, what you would try to do is you try to expand your market as much as possible. Because when you expand your market, I mean, the more you expand the market, the further you expand the market, the more players you can include in the same market definition, and the lower the market share or the market power you would have. Right? And this is so important. As I emphasized, this is like the first thing that you need to do when you do the case, right? In reality. Okay, so now you have banana and apple, and you can keep doing this, right? You can ask like, okay, what if banana and apple increase their price at the same time by 10% by these players, for example? What else would consumers switch to?
Kiwi.
Yeah, kiwi and what you can keep doing this, right?
Yeah.
And eventually you can say that the market is actually the market of fruits, right? You cannot say that this is the market of banana. Or if you have a good like set of data, you can make good arguments, you can even expand it even further, right? That if the prices of fruits increases, then maybe people switch to buy supplements, right? That is possible as well. You have this like multivitamin capsules, and or you can expand to like what dessert. Say that okay, people would just buy cake and buy other dessert or sweets instead of fruits, right? As long as you can collect the data, and you can use this same set of data, right? Because this is like the demand of banana, price of banana, but you can use the demand of like fruits or demand and the price of fruits as well. Like you have an average price, right? You sum all these prices and you divide it by kinds of them, number of kinds, and you get the average price of fruits. And you see if there's increase in the average price of fruits, then what happened to the demand of something else, right? So you can keep doing this until you see no relationship, right? There must be a limit where you find, okay, fruits are fruits, they are not substitutable by other things, and that's it. You say that the product market are fruits, right? The product market is defined by fruits, and that's it. And what is another dimension?
Geography.
All right, thank you. Geography, right? So this is geo. Again, well, actually the same analysis could be used here, because here you use suppose I copy this here. Let's say I copy these over here, right? For now, when you talk about this is like banana, but I could change it to like say, well, sorry. No. Right. Let's say that this is like, because you would like to know first if Samyang and Siam Square are supposed to be in the same market or not, right? And the logic is quite simple that suppose shop A increases its own price, then would people go all the way to Siam Square to buy the same thing? So that is geographical market definition. Well, I think for Samyang and Siam Square, still certain extent reasonable, right? Because it's not just, it's just pretty much just around the corner, and people just, I mean, can afford to travel from Samyang to Siam Square, right? But if I change not from Samyang to Siam Square, but here the market is, and you use the same logic, right? Suppose that the price of one product here, this is the price at Samyang, right? Price Samyang. But if the price of Samyang increases, right? What happened to the demand of the same product elsewhere? For example, this is going to be Siam Square, right? It's going to be Siam Square. And if you prove that this is quite elastic, in the sense that whenever the price of Samyang increases, then the demand of Siam Square would increase like substantially. Would that say something, right? Let's say something that probably people would just switch when it is more expensive. But well, when you make a case, then sometimes number is not perfect, because you might need to control for other things as well. It's just happened to be the case that there are some other things at Siam Square, so that people will like go to Siam Square more, and that is why the demand at Siam Square increases. but maybe it has nothing to do with the relationship between the price between these two locations. But that's just essentially all about the other sort of circumstantial evidence or circumstantial data that you will use. But essentially, you see the logic here, right? That there is some sort of level of substitutability between these two locations, right? Or in real case, sometimes you use this geolocation data as well. For example, you have customers data of shop A, right? Shop A selling these bananas, and let's say there's a fruit shop, and it has this member card. It has a member card in which you would see addresses of customers. Then you will know where these customers are actually living, right? So you will see that, right? Most customers are living nearby. It is quite natural. You will see some outliers, but that is something that you can basically clear it out. And suppose that you say that I'll draw some sort of radius, right? And if shop B happens to be in the same area, then you would be able to say that you should include B geographically into the same market as A, given that the products are the same, right? And this area could be if the product is big enough, then you could say that. And if you look at some cases, they would have this sort of single price policy. And if they have single price policy, you can probably say that the market is the whole country. That is okay as well. But in this case, maybe you would say that suppose it's just shop A and shop B, and you can say the Samyan and Siam Square should be included in the same market. That's fine. But if I say there's another shop, shop E, which is situated in Chiang Mai, right? It's just not logically sound that customers, suppose all these shops increase their prices, and then customers would travel all the way from Bangkok, from Samyan and Siam Square to buy the same thing, which is fruit from Chiang Mai. Right, so in that case, the geographical area would be limited to certain scope. Maybe you say it's just in the Payatai area or Patumwan area, and that's it. Or maybe in the Bangkok, and that's it, right? In the Bangkok, and that is large enough, and that's it. People want to go all the way out this area. So that is another dimension. Even if like some other shops in Samut Prakan or some other shops in Pathum Thani are selling the same product, you might not include them into the same market. But so there are two kinds of angles from which you look at this market definition, right? Product and geography. So when you analyze it, you will see that, okay, now let's say that this is the Bangkok metropolitan area, right? The geography is Bangkok metropolitan area. Then when you analyze it, you will say that, okay, the market definition is this. Market definition of this case is, say, fruit market in Bangkok metropolitan area, right? And when you draw this sort of definition, you draw this. Sometimes this is called relevant market. You will see this much clearly when we analyze cases, and like these topics, right? Merger, vertical integration, and market dominance, abuse of dominance. All those topics, the very starting point is this market definition. You will see in all cases that they have to start with this, right? And then when you can draw this, you would be able to identify players, right? Say shop A, shop B, shop C, shop D. and so on and so forth. Then the next thing that you want to do is you want to say, is there any player who is really powerful in terms of the ability to, well, basically set the prices, set qualities, set any market parameters. Basically, is there any player who has a substantial market power? Or maybe the question at hand could be that suppose that A and B want to merge, would they be too powerful? Right? I want to show you this diagram that I drew on the other day to explain it to the Energy Commission. Wait, where's it? Okay. But it is slightly hard to understand. You just ignore these section 1, section 5, section 10 or whatever, right? But the idea is this: when you start from having these players, and in the context of this energy sector, most players would need the license to conduct that business, right? So we call them licensees. And when you control that competition, when you would like to control their sort of relationship or their conducts in the market, there are two ways, right? One thing is you would like to be a bit more precautious in the sense that you have a look at their structure, right? And the main thing is this: you don't want to hold someone liable or hold someone accountable as long as they haven't done anything wrong. That's the bottom line. Okay, so you want to punish someone when they have conducted something bad, right? They abuse their market power. They do some tricks to kick their competitors out of the market, right? They increases abuse of dominance could include, like, they increase their price arbitrarily. They just reduce the quality unfairly, right? Or they use the market power to dump the price down when someone enters the market, so that player, the entrants, could compete against them. That sort of things are the things we call conducts, right? They do something. And when they do something bad, they do something that is anti-competitive, then we say that, okay, you do something anti-competitive and we will need to stop you, right? That's the bottom line. When you have these players, suppose that you call these in our context, this would be business operator, right? Business operators. And you have all these, suppose that you draw the market already, right? You draw this market. This will be what we call the relevant market that we just analyzed. Right? You draw the market, and you have all the business operators who are running their business inside this relevant market. And whenever one of them or a group of them will do something bad, right? They did have this anti-competitive conduct, then you want to punish them. And that what we call the exposed measure, right? You do something wrong, I'll hold you liable. That's what we call exposed, right? Something wrong has happened, and then we hold someone accountable for that. But sometimes it's too late, right? Sometimes it's too late, and we know that in general cases, if you have so many players, if you have so many business operators in the market, well, each of them would not be able to do anything, right? Because suppose that we have like million of business operators in the same market. If one of them decide that he or she would increase the price, the thing is that people would just switch to buy it from someone else, right? That you have this sort of competitive force, and you won't be able to do any anti-competitive conducts anyway, because you don't have any power to do that. right? But in the case where you have like just a few players, or you have any player who is like much larger than other players, in that case, it is more likely that that big player would do something wrong. So you want to prevent that adverse thing, or prevent that anti-competitive conduct from happening. That is why you sometimes we come up with this sort of structural approach in order to prevent something in advance, right? You prevent something in advance, which is what we call the ex ante, right? And that happens in this case, that for example that you sometimes you want to merge, okay, and this is in our context, it's just basically merger, right? When there is a structural change, and well, initially there was no big player, because there are three or four players who are actually about the same size. But if two of them or three of them or more than that want to merge into the same firm, or one of them just want to buy other firms and become one big players, then that will be what we call a structural change. And when the structural change happens, you will have one big player. And whenever you have one big player in the market, that player tends to do something evil. Right? So that is why you come up with this sort of ex ante approach and say that whenever you become a dominant player, well, you have to ask for a permission first, or you should at least let me know so I can keep close eye on you. That is why under Trade Competition Act, if you merge and you will become a big player, and that is defined by having market share more than 50% of market share, you would have to come to the commission and ask for the approval first. And that is what we call ex ante, because now you control the structure, because you know that if you but the structure is a good indicator, even though it's not a definite indicator of the behavior or the conduct, right? So there are two ways to control the market competition. The first thing is you control the conduct, right? Well, you are big, and if you do something bad, then I'm gonna punish you, right? And at the same time, what you try to do is you try to control the structure as well. That I know that if you become a monopoly, or if you become a really big player, a dominant player, then you would conduct badly. You would conduct anti-competitively. So I would like to control the structure first. I don't want you to have that much market power at the very beginning, right? So there are two ways to control this. So we're going to talk about this thing, right? The market power, because the whole thing about competition is you draw the market, and you want to know if there is any player any business operator who would have a dominant position, or who would be able to do something against the market force. All right, so the purpose of this market definition that we have explored so far is pretty much just to be able to assess the market power of players that we incorporate into a certain relevant market. If you look at this official definition, or the legal definition of market, which is in the Trade Competition Act, stated a relevant market, right? This is the legal term of it. A relevant market of goods or services which are of the same type or substitutable. Right? And you can consider some things like qualifications, prices, purposes of use, and the area. Right? So that is essentially boiling down to two kinds of market definition: the product market and the geographical market. Okay, this is what we covered last time, right? Just taste. Oh, and when you draw this sort of market definition already, one possibility is that you can say that suppose this is the sort of the current status of market. This is like the market, the relevant market that you have now. You can say that it is quite easy for some player to come in as well. Suppose that all these firms increase their prices, then someone would just enter the market. Well, that would even sort of like further expand the scope of your market. That is one of the arguments that you can make as well, right? In the dynamic sense, you can say that okay, these players, these entrants are not existing at the moment, but we know that okay, even if we have just these two players at the moment, but we cannot increase the price because whenever we increase the price, someone would just jump into the market. That is one thing that you can make an argument in reality as well. Okay. Right, and suppose that now you can draw the relevant market. The next step is to define the market power. Well, theoretically, you know that if you record what I taught when I was talking about this basic microeconomics, is that the competitive market is where the price equal marginal cost. Right, the price of the product that you sell is equal to the cost that you used in order to produce it. And the reason is simply because if you increase the price just by a little bit, people would just switch to buy something else. But the thing is that in practice, this doesn't make sense at all. Let alone the fact that you won't ever be able to compute this marginal cost. It's just impossible. You would not be able to precisely measure it. Right? So in reality and in practice, the Competition Commission know and expected it is fine if firms would have certain degrees of market power. So you could get some sort of extra profit, and that's fine. But what they need to know is that they don't want you to have too much market power. So there are two things that they need from you, right? The first thing is how would they be able to measure your market power? And then we need some sort of cutting line or threshold that, well, whenever your market power sort of increase and hit the ceiling or maybe surpass the ceiling, then that is quite a red flag, and I would need to investigate, or I may need to stop you from doing that. Right, so we need two things. We need to the sort of, you can think of it as like basically a measure, like a temperature, right? 30 degrees, 40 degree, and you say that, well, I cannot let the room temp to be higher than 40 degrees because otherwise it's gonna be too hot. So what is that measure? One of the most popular one is what we call the learner's index. The learner's index. What it says is, well, it says that here's the definition of learner index, right? If you zoom in, what it says is this. It says that what is the difference between the price of fruits? Suppose that you talk about the market of fruits here, and the marginal cost of fruit divided by the price of fruit that you can sell. So basically it means that if learner index is equal to 0, what does it mean? If it's equal to 0, then what does it mean? Do you have market power or you don't?
It means that you have no market power.
Right. Right. So you have no market power, right? And suppose that is really high, then basically it means that you have high market power. Right? So and this is essentially sometimes what you do is you just look at the sort of level of profit relative to the price level. But the question is, is it so difficult that you will be able to measure the marginal cost here, right? this marginal cost. Especially in the case that marginal cost is not constant. In the sense that when you produce the first lots of goods and that you have one level of marginal cost, but you produce a second slot and a third slot, and then marginal cost changes, then that would just ruin this formula. Okay, and sometimes it could be that the price is essentially equal to marginal cost, but because even if you have a monopolist, and the reason is simply because that monopolist is so inefficient and the cost level is really high, right? And you know that monopolists will not be able to set the price arbitrarily, and the reason for that is you want to set the price just to be at the level where you can produce, at the level where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. That is when you profit and maximize. If you remember, but that's essentially economics. But the thing is, well, sometimes you can have a monopolist whose the difference between the price and marginal cost is really, really slim. But you have a monopolist here, which has a really high market power. But just because it is inefficient, you would have a low level of learning index as well. All right, but learning index could be defined differently as well. It could be defined this way. I could derive it and show you how to derive it, but the question is, maybe you don't need it. But you just need to understand the meaning of it. As, do you want me to derive it for you?
If it can be done easily.
Okay, I'll try, and I'll see you. I'll try to show that learning index could be derived and show that it's just the ratio of market share of that firm divided by the elasticity of demand. But just look at this things first. This is quite intuitive, actually. Learning index is the index that show how how much market power you have, right? So if you suppose you have a great, huge market share, and your demand is super inelastic, what does it mean? You have high market share and your demand is super inelastic.
You're a monopolist?
Yeah, you could be monopolist or a big player, right? Because you have a really high level of market share, but at the same time, when you change the price, people won't change their demand. So M here would be really, really high, right? It essentially your market share, and elasticity is really low, which basically say that you are inelastic. So if you have a ratio of this, then basically the value will be skyrocketing, and your learning index would increases a lot, right? So basically, high learning index says that you're having market power, very high market power. All right. So this is the intuition of this formula. Okay. So that is why in practice, sometimes you cannot collect. This is probably the best way to measure the market power, but in practice, sometimes you cannot find all the data available. You would be able to measure just this market share, and you say that the higher the market share, holding other things constant, should mean that you have greater market power, right? You could probably have just this piece of evidence, and the only thing you can say is that, okay, I think, well, ceteris paribus, which basically means that if you hold other things constant, a firm with higher market share should have more market power. But a counter argument could be that, look, the elasticity is super high as well, right? You can say that this firm has like maybe 90% of market share, but if you can find a counter evidence saying that, you know what, this thing is super high as well, so the learner index would be low, right? Because now the denominator is large as well as the numerator. And this is like in practice the way that you try to argue. You say that, okay, I admit that market share is really high. But if you look at this elasticity of demand, you see that it's super elastic as well. So even if I have a great, like quite a substantial market share, but I cannot increase my price arbitrarily. Okay. And this makes sense in so many cases, especially the case where you have just a few buyers. Some markets, I mean, when you talk about banana, you talk about orange or fruits. Well, there are so many buyers, right? But in some cases, for example, if you are running a service for, okay, so for example, the case that I was involving previously was this um, lining shipping, liner shipping company, where you basically you transport oil and fuel for large oil companies, right? And well, there could be just 2 or 3 players in Thailand, but their buyers are like PTT and Shell, right? So they have just 3 or 4 players who are huge. Even if the market share of these liner shipping companies is like 40 or 50 or 60%, but they have just a few buyers. So what it means is that they cannot increase their price arbitrarily anyway, right? Because whenever they increase their price, then, well, essentially what happened is these big players would just switch to buy from another, right? Because they have a really, really substantial level of bargaining power. In that case, you see this orange here, right? That, yeah, you see that the market is quite elastic because these big firms could essentially hire, well, firms elsewhere, shipping companies elsewhere, and import them and say that I'll just hire you and I ask for the permission, I mean, to allow you to operate in the Gulf of Thailand. Okay, so this is the way that you measure market power in practice. If you understand its intuition, then that's fine. I don't think I need to derive maths for you. Is this okay?
Yes, it's okay.
Yeah, okay. It won't be an exam, but if you want to have a look at it, you can search this learning index and I mean, it is in the textbook, it's in the Mata book. If you fancy deriving it, it's not that difficult. Okay. But if the intuition is fine, then now you understand it, right? So the higher the market share, the higher the learner index, the more market power you tend to have, right? That's intuitive. And again, the lower the elasticity basically means that if the market is inelastic, the higher the learner index, the more market power you tend to have. All right. And this will come back later, this HHI. This is something that used so widely in practice. Okay. I'll come back to this later because you haven't, I want to explain this HHI as well. Okay, so when you measure market power, that is an ideal case, right? You have this learner index, and that is by definition the definition of market power. But in reality, as I said, you cannot always find good set of data to calculate all the measures. So you have this indirect assessment of market power. The most popular thing is the market shares. And this is most likely being the thing that you would have to measure in practice. And other things are like, this is like a dynamic, as I said. Well, you can argue that, well, even if I have high market shares, but it's quite easy for player to come in. Whenever I increase the price, people would just jump into the market, right? So that's the easy likelihood of entry. And the way that you prove this in practice is you look back into your industry for like 10 years, so for example, of 5 years. And you can measure, like, you can have this ratio, right? Saying that how many players enter and exit the market. This is what you can do. And this is actually what we did in practice as well. You say that, okay, once you define the market, and you want to say that your market is very easily, it's very easy to enter. Then you look back like 5 years, 10 years, and you say that, look, there are so many new players coming into the market, so many new firms opening in the past 10 years, right? And if you look at their market shares, well, they keep coming in and their market shares are growing, and some close and then someone come in. You see this sort of like fluidity of the market, and that proves something that, okay, well, if you do something wrong, people will just come in, which essentially means that you don't have high market power, even if you have high market share, right? And buyer power, as I said, well, these things actually could be captured by elasticity of demand, as I said, right? As I said earlier here. You can have a really high market share, but your market could be super elastic as well, in the sense that whenever you increase the price, someone come in. But just at the moment you have a high market share, that is possible, right? And this is the market share, right? Okay. If you want to go a bit more sophisticated, you can use econometrics to measure your market power as well. I'll explain them intuitively, all right? But for now, let's have a look at this traditional way of measuring market power first. And actually, in the law, this is in the law. It says that the market share could be measured by these measurements, all right? You can have a look at the sales volume in the previous year, for example, right? Like, but this is like after you define the market already, right? Shop A. Suppose that now you have this. This is the same, the fruit market in the Bangkok metropolitan area. But you want to know what's the market share of shop A, shop B, shop C, and shop D. Then you ask for that data, right? That's sales. And you suppose that for this you sell for like for 100 million, 100 million, 100 million, and 100 million. So, well, for that you could say that A has a 25% market share, right? And all of them have equal level of market shares. Or you can talk about turnover as well, right? You look at essentially the profit, because they could have different level of cost as well. And you say that well, the player with greater profit should be better. I mean, should better reflect the level of market power that that player has, right? I mean, they could have essentially the same level of sales, but suppose that A has like 40 million profit and B has just 20 million, and this has 10 million and 10 million. So now the market shares of A increases substantially, right? It's not 25% anymore. This is now 50%, right? It's now 50% market share instead of 25. Because, I mean, don't bear in mind, especially if you are working with economists in real cases, market share is just a proxy of market power. So in a particular case, the measure that you use should be I mean, should better represent the level of market power. If you feel that the level of profit better represents level of market power, then you should use that as a measure of market share. But the thing is this, so the first, this is turnover, right? This is say the sales. The problem is this, in reality, it's so difficult to find the turnover or the level of profit. And it's simply because you don't have data. All right, especially of other competitors, other players, because this turnover is usually, especially the case that it is not a public company. If it is just a private company, then this number is just essentially inaccessible, right? So you sometimes you just have to go to the second base because you cannot find the first base measure. All right, and in some markets where, I mean, the sales could be very sort of volatile, right? Or the profit could be volatile, depend on different seasons or depend on different factors. You might want to have a look at the production level or the production capacity as well. So this is not in the money term, but in terms of like quantity. If you recall the attempt of BDMS, you know BDMS, right? Yeah, BDMS were trying to do this hostile merger with BH, right? The Bambaburat Hospital, but they pulled out already. So in that case, I would like, you want to make a guess what sort of measure we use in order to measure the market share of BDMS in the hospital market.
The number of patients.
Yeah, we have number of patients as well. So that, I think that is probably production level, right? You think of patients as like when you produce goods, and essentially patients like you produce service, and you can count that by patients' head, right? Count the head of patients, and that's essentially the production level. What else can you use? Because some hospital will not have the full capacity at all time, right? Sometimes if your hospital is quite popular, but suppose that you increase the price, patients will just switch to some other hospital. So what do you think can be used as a measure of market share?
The number of beds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wait. Right, and in this hospital market, it's not just about hospital. Just it's so interesting that when you do this hospital case, could you come up with some possible relevant markets when it comes to this hospital merger? You think it's just hospital and that's it, or you think there are some other markets as well involving in this?
Maybe medicine.
Sorry, yeah, medicine, yes, drugs, right? Yes, because BDMS producing their own medicines as well, and BH, I think BH has it. I'm not sure, but BDMS definitely has it. And when you talk about the market of like producing these meds, then basically you have to include like other players, right? Like these drug companies, you have to include them into that market as well. And BDMS market share is just like triple, like 1% or even less than that. What else?
I don't know, but medical device, does it count?
In which way?
I don't know whether they manufacture medical device as well.
Not really, not really. But there's something to do with medical devices.
They sell it?
Not really, not really. But when you define market, you go to the lowest level possible, right? To the most granular level, and you can think of medical devices or these sort of machineries as like MRI scanned. But you go to a BDMS hospital, but maybe some smaller hospitals will not have MRI scan. So you cannot say that in the product, like suppose that I want to use MRI scanned, you cannot say that any hospital would be substitutable, right? And so the market, the relevant market could go to the very, very granular level, very fine grain level, right? That is when we were sort of pursuing that case, it's not just about like hospital, like big thing, but well, we actually sort of stratified it into smaller pieces, like internal medicine, right? Well, pediatrics unit, obgyn unit, right? Because, well, not all hospitals provide the same set of services, and hospitals also have different sort of like set of possible services that they will be able to provide. Yeah, so basically you divide hospitals into different kind of services, and this is why the case is super intense and really fun to do as well, because it's not just you say that like okay hospital and you have like 100 hospitals in the case of, in the area of Bangkok, right? But that is geography. But let's say that you are talking about Bangkok. Even within Bangkok, you have like okay, this 40 hospitals have complete like internal medicine and surgery, right? But maybe some like 600 hospitals would not have them, right? So maybe you have to divide like between, you have to separate between these two market definitions, because for these full set, and also you have this sort of tier of hospitals as well. Consumers who going to Bangkok hospital will not go to government hospital because the waiting times are completely different. That is another argument you can say it as well, right? So this is why the market definition is really important, because one possible argument for this BDMS and BH is this. You can say the BH is at the like top level, gold standard, and they serve like a specific set of consumers or patients. And BDMS, even the Bangkok hospital, is serving another set of consumers. But I say that is like A plus and BDMS is just A and below. Then you can say that okay, they are actually operating in completely different markets, right? So if you can argue that way, you could say that the merger would not affect anything. It's just a change of hand. That is possible as well. Right? Okay, so you can use these different measures to measure market shares, and the logic is whatever measure you use, you just have to sort of justify that it is actually will represent um, the market power that you are trying to capture. Okay. Right, so market share, usually we use market share as just like a screening device, in the sense that, okay, for example, you have a look at the merger article, right? The merger section. It says that, okay, suppose that post-merger your market share exceeds 50%, or if 3 players together exceeds 75%, then you have to come and you ask for approval. but otherwise this is okay. You just notified us afterwards. What it says is this, right? If it is below X%, then this is fine. You can go ahead and do whatever you want. But if it's above certain level, well, it may say or it may not say something, right? You just have to sort of provide additional information, and I want to have a closer look and understand, like, yeah, would it be problematic? Would you have too much market power? Right? And you might need to consider something as well, like, well, will the market share be persistent? Right? In the sense that now you may have really high market share, but if you are running out of reserves, or you could, it is simply because you are less efficient, and well, some players would get higher market share in the future. Do you have any excess capacity, or now you are serving at like a full capacity? Right? You remember the patience and bait here, right? Well, you could have like a really high market share, but you won't be able to expand any further because now it's like 100% of your base. That is possible as well. But if you say that you have a high market share and you still have like, and now you are serving at just 50% of your capacity because, well, you have like say 100 patients, but you have 200 beds. That is what we call excess capacity, right? So it basically means that you can actually have more. You can have more demand. You can serve more demand, which indicates that you may be able to exercise market power to a certain extent, right? And suppose this is what I meant here is less frequent order. It means that this suppose that, okay, for example, the shipbuilding industry, it takes 2 or 3 years to build a ship, right? It takes quite some time. I mean, you order it and you wait for another 2 or 3 years. So if it is quite late, like the frequency of order is quite, well, sporadic, maybe once in 2 years, once in a decade. And when you measure at a particular point in time, you could say that, okay, if you consider the number of orders, then this is a monopolist because there is no order to other players whatsoever, right? But the thing is this, the time span that you should measure is not a year or 2 years, but it could be 5 years. Otherwise, you're going to get this erratic measure of the market power, right? Because the order could come to one company just in this year, and that's completely fine because other players are still producing their previous orders like 2 years ago, right? So this sort of temporal measurement errors, what it means is that if you capture the market by measuring something at moment in time, but the frequency of the market is the span is much longer than that, then you're going to capture the wrong picture, right? And the two things here, the first is the ease and likelihood of entry. As I said, you can go look back like 2 years, look back 5 years, and say that, okay, how many players have come in? But that is a good indicator for the future, right? That whatever you do, I mean, people would probably just, if I increase the price or I lower the quality, people would be easily coming and compete against me. And buyer power is really useful as well, right? Because you can make an argument that, okay, I know the market share is quite substantial. Well, is it true that there are not that many new entrants in the past, I don't know, a few years? But you look at my buyers, they are really big, and I don't have that much negotiation power against them, right? So that is the buyer power. Okay, so this is essentially just the, well, the different ways in which you can use in order to show the ease and likelihood of entry, right? Contestable markets. This is the case that you have if you have this high fixed sunk costs. For example, well, there are some heavy industries where if you would like to come into markets, you probably have to invest hugely, right? You have to invest in the machine. For example, some like you can think about like mines, right? If you want to dig some minerals out of the lands, you have to invest hugely, right? At the very beginning, or you can think about oil as well. Um, think about some chemical where you will need quite a big investment, big initial investment. The higher this initial investment is, the more difficult for anyone to come into the market, right? Because you need quite a substantial amount of money at the very beginning. And that is what we call the extra sunk cost, right? Exogenous sunk cost, like investment into the endowed with technology to be able to operate, right? But well, if you talk about like this fruits shop or any fresh markets, then I think the sunk cost is really low, right? I can just rent a space and pay like some, well, thousands baht, and eventually I'll basically I'll be able to sell fruits, right? So I mean, it's quite contestable because the sunk cost or the fixed cost is really low. But if I would like to have my own power plant, then that's just another story. Because you cannot open a tiny power plant, right? You have to put quite a lot of money in order to just to begin to start the first megawatt, right? That is the reason why some industry are really uncontestable. Or you can talk about this endogenous sunk cost as well. For example, well, it doesn't mean that if I would like to produce, well, something that you perceive as high quality products. For example, some sort of, you can think about cosmetic or medicine, right? I cannot just simply just launch the product, or, well, if there's any product that requires a branding effect. For example, there's clothes or luxurious brands, right? It cannot be produced this sort of reputation and trust overnight. You can think about Coke, and Coke could argue that, you know what, it's just water mixed with sugar and you carbonate it. So anyone can do it. You cannot say that, right? Because that is true. That is true in terms of exogenous, like exogeneity, in the sense that I can also produce my own Pepsi. But because of the branding and the marketing they have put in for decades, nobody would just switch from Coke to buy my carbonated drinks. Right? That could be the another kind of sunk cost, high fixed cost as well. All right, and switching costs could be used in order to measure the ease and likelihood of entry as well. Like if you are using something, right? You are using some brands, and it is quite difficult for consumers to switch and buy something else. And these two things are becoming more and more important these days. This lock-in effect and network externalities. Okay, just to put you in perspective now where we are. We're talking about this sort of relevant market, right? And we are trying to say that, okay, how would you, if you have to argue or you have to consider whether these business operators are having market power or not. We talk about market shares, which is more sort of like crude indicator and also static one, right? Now we're talking about something that's more dynamic. And these lock-in effect and network externalities are becoming more and more important because now we have the things that we call platforms. Where we have platforms, and the nature of platforms are the sort of like the value platforms. What do you think is the main value platform? This Facebook, this Google, this, well, you can talk about App Store as well. What is what determines the value of it?
I
Facebook.
think it makes like entering into the market more easier.
Okay, I think I know where you come from. I think Richowitz, you wanna say something?
Yeah, you mean the value of the platform, right?
Yes.
I think it's the network created to like the more people joining in, the more value it has.
Yeah. Okay. So you two made two very important points, right? Now, you say that it creates like more equal opportunity, because this is essentially you think about Shopee, right? So example, you think about Shopee, you think about Lazada, think about Amazon. Well, this is the competition within platform, right? In the sense that you create a marketplace, and when you have this marketplace, it means that we are not limited to just mom and pop shops nearby, right? We are not limited to just department stores in order to get our products, but now we can access to more sellers as well. And in that sense, we call it as the competition within market, right? And that is good in the sense that now you get another marketplace in which it is more accessible for consumers to get access to the sellers. That is good in one way, right? But which you mentioned about that the more player coming in, the more likely that additional players would like to join the network, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when we talk about this sort of platform, like sometimes we call it the two-sided market, right? Two-sided market. Well, nowadays, you know what? In CP, one of the arguments the CP use when it comes to this sort of like competition, like the market power that it would have, it says that, you know what? I do have Tesco. I do have I will have this sort of sorry, what was the name of the CP shop? 7-Eleven, for example. Okay, yeah. They say that it is not just these brick and mortar shops, but our competitors are also these online platforms, because consumers wish to buy more online, right? So they say that the market definition is not just only like this brick and mortar and physical shops, but also the online space as well. And that makes sense because you want to expand your relevant market to be as broad as possible, right? So it's true that when you have this sort of like platform, you have more competition, which is probably good. But the thing is this, by the nature of platform, for example, like Clubhouse, right? The most recent platform. The thing is, if nobody is in Clubhouse, you don't want to join it, but you want to join it because there are quite a few people in there, right? It's the same as Facebook. If you have no friends in Facebook, what's the point of joining it? The very condition of joining Facebook is essentially because you have quite a few friends in the platform already. Or you can think about Shopee, right? Shopee, Lazada. Well, if you get into the platform and there's no seller, you won't go, right? And well, at the same time, if you don't have any other buyers who purchase, you think about JD Central. Has any of you ever bought something with JD Central?
No.
No. What about you two? What about the rest of you? Have you ever bought anything from JD Central?
Yes, I bought a shoe.
Oh, you bought shoes?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. JD Central idea was more of like you you move central, you move this department store online. What it lacks of is this of a customer review, right? And actually, well, they do have it, but not as good as Lazada and Shopee. And you can't actually compare this to Amazon, right? And you can see that, okay, I mean, psychologically, if you want to buy something, right, from a shop, what you want to see is like, okay, how many customers have purchased from this shop? The more customers purchase from this shop, or the more customer review this shop, the more credible it seems, right? You would be more confident to buy something from that particular shop. And that applies to the well, the shop themselves. They want to come. This is from the side of consumers, right? So the customer would like to have much more customers in the platform as well. But at the same time, this for the sellers, they don't want to be the lone seller in the platform either, right? Because they want to they want to make sure that people come, and people would come from the very beginning, because people would expect that there are going to be so many sellers. There are going to be quite a vast variety of products available on this platform. So as an individual seller, you would prefer to have more sellers in the market as well. So this is what we call this network externalities, right? So the more people you have in the network or in this platform, buyers, sellers, or you can think of it as like in the app store, right? You have the developers and users. You want to go into app store and seeing like what app available, right? You want like so many variety of apps available. And at the same time, the developer would go into the platform like App Store or Play Store, where there are so many products available already, because, well, he or she knows that, well, there are also downloaders or users in that platform as well. And this sort of network externalities create this sort of, what do you call, a business strategy, right? You can have a look at these platforms. And it is unsurprising that, okay, nowadays, and this applies to this Lime and Food Panda and Grab as well, right? These are platforms as well. You want more restaurants into your platform, and you want more consumers. And the more you can attract, the more value you would acquire. That is the reason why these platforms tend to be acquiring quite a huge amount of loss. They will not be profitable in the first few years, and they don't care. What they care is they want to gain traction. They want to gain as many players, as many people in that ecosystem. Because when they can do that, like Facebook, it's going to be so difficult for someone else to enter the market. I could not imagine myself create, or anyone create, the same sort of like social network and will be able to compete against Facebook, right? Because if I will create that and actually have pretty much the same function, I will need someone to, well, basically migrate from that platform to my platform, right? And that is so difficult, because you alone, you don't want to move out of the platform, right? Because all of your friends are still in the previous platform, and everyone will think likewise. And that is why we call it a lock-in effect. You get locked in, right? You get locked in. So now it comes to the second point, right? This is the competition between markets. And this is actually a new sort of problem in competition in today's world. The platforms are getting larger and larger. But there might be some argument that there's what we call a multi-homing. This is possible as well. It's called multi-homing. We say that well, you could be in a Clubhouse, you could be Line, you could be on all these platforms at the same time as well, right? But in that sense, there must be certain level of differentiation, right? Like Clubhouse is completely different from the previous platforms or social media, social networks. But if you are having the same thing, you won't be able to compete. And Well, that's something to say that now certain platform like Facebook or Google are you look at the largest companies in the world now, right? Abacus, which is actually Google, Facebook, Amazon. But these firms are actually largest in the world, and the very reason why they are large, like they have become the largest players in the world just I think less than a decade after they have been established. It's simply because of these network externalities. And what is the main source of income for these platforms?
Advertisement.
Yes, advertisement. And it is quite interesting. I mean, I just wrote a paper on this very thing, and well, when the main source of income of Facebook, and you can see that they are now getting sort of after by competition commissions, especially in Europe and the US, simply because, well, when the source of income is the advertisement, and the sort of the way in which they use to boost up their ads is to try to be as precise as possible in terms of targeting customers, right? Because the more precise you can, the more efficient it is. Like, okay, for each dollar that I pay to you, I will be able to reach to the one with the most sort of like turnover rate. Like people would just sorry, not turnover, conversion rate, right? As a business, as someone who would like to create an ads on any sort of media, what I want to maximize is this conversion rate, right? I want to know that how my return on investment would be. Like if I spread ads to like 100 people, how many of them would end up purchasing my product? And the only way that you can use that is to use the data, right? To use the data that we are using. We are using that network, the page that we like, the message that you type in on in the comment boxes, the behavior, right? The page on Facebook that you click earlier. All these data are basically used in order to identify which sort of ads that they should be able to show you, right? And that essentially why they have been quite well investigated quite intensely in the past few years, because I mean, especially after Trump incidents, right? The Cambridge Analytica incidents. So I think this is quite subtle, and this is why competition law has become more and more important these days, because now it's not just about business. This is more and more clear. It's just like so clear now that people can link this competition with politics, right? All right, so that's the ease and likelihood of entry. And the last thing is buyer's power. Because if buyers have power to say that I'm gonna switch seller, or otherwise I could just produce it myself. But then even if you have high market share, you won't be able to do anything anyway, right? So this is actually has been used, right, in this Enzo and Stroller case. That okay, I know that your power is quite high, but well, your buyers is even bigger, and they can actually produce your product themselves. All right, that is sort of indirect assessment of market power, but for this is the direct assessment of market power, which I'm thinking whether I should cover it at all. But the idea is quite the same. You can collect the data and create a model in such a way that you can see this sort of relationship between where you can say that this is like, say for example, the price, right, and demand of firm So basically, you can see the relationship between the demand of all firms in the market, in the same relevant market, to the price of the product. You can collect data and you can crunch the relationship out of it. What you can see is this technique would be able to provide you a precise way to understand what if you change it, what is the relationship between the price in the market and the demand of a particular firm, right? And that essentially what we would like to know as the demand elasticity, right? And it's called residual because it says that what if the demand has been served, right? Because let's say that the whole market would need 100 oranges, and other players have served like say 90 oranges. The question is, what would happen if you increase the price of your portion, right? Because now you are serving 10 oranges to the market. This technique would be able to tell you that it was supposed to you increase the price of these 10 oranges. What would happen to the demand? What would happen to the what would happen in the sense of how people would switch to buy the remaining players, right? So it's just a technique that would be able to provide you that solution. Okay, so now we know that there are so many different ways to measure the market share. And if you may recall, right, that if you have market share is used as a screening test, in the sense that if you have lower than certain level of market share, it is quite unlikely that you would have an ability to do something, right? You are just a small player. But if your market share exceeds certain level, then that is sort of like a smoking screen, right? In the sense that maybe you would be able to do something. Maybe you would be able to have this anti-competitive conduct. You remember the diagram, right? So this is like the indicator of the structure that may be problematic, even if there's nothing happening yet. So in this case, you could be a dominant player, and in the Trade Competition Act, there are two possibilities. All right. The first possibility is if you could be post-merger, or could be that the status quo of yours is that you have greater than 50% market share, and the sales in your previous year exceeds 1 billion baht. So it has to be both. Okay, it has to be both. So in this case, it basically means that, well, if you are small, well, you can have this sort of like small market, right? Let's say fruit markets that the sales is like super low, like 100 million or whatever. In this case, you will not be considered as a dominant player. Competition Commission don't want to bother, right? There are so many markets in this country, and you can use this sort of level of sales like 1 billion as in the sense that it should affect quite a substantial portion of population. If the sale is just 100 million or 10 million, well, that would definitely affect certain amount of consumers, but well, the resources are essentially limited, right? So basically, they just put an emphasis on the larger firms. And the second possibility is if they are the top 3 players, right? And all together, you sum the market share of these 3 players. If the market share is greater than 75%, and each of you has the previous year, right? The past year sales exceed 1 billion, right? You have 1 billion, you have 1 billion, and you have 1 billion. Well, then in that case, you will be considered as a dominant player. But there is this sort of condition that, well, each of you, to be considered as a dominant player, should have a greater than 10% market share. Right? So for example, if well, suppose that you you have these three, right? And market share is like 5%, and now you have like 60%, and say 15%. I'm sorry, let's say less than 15. Let's say 12%. All right, you have these three players. Now all of them together would be 77%. All right, so this qualifies. And suppose each of them has like, well, more than 1 billion baht last year. So then, but now you have to consider each of them. But for this player, you have less than 10% market share. You will not be considered as the dominant player. All right, so it's like you single out three players first, right? That qualify these conditions. And then to be called as the dominant player, you have to qualify this as well, right? So now these two will be a dominant player. All right. And this is a concept that is important as well. I think we discussed this already not last time, but I think in the very first time we met, right? That is the business operators. When essentially it means that we are not talking about just a single business operator, a single firm, or a single juristic person. We consider a single business entity or business operator as a group of firms that are related to each other due to a policy of commanding power. Right? They could have this sort of cross share, right? I could own certain assets or shares of another company directly or indirectly. But we care about this sort of commanding power, controlling power. Because in this case, you can call them together as the controlling power. Right? And this is considered a factor. As long as all firms can sort of influence each other, can control each other, even though they are sort of distinctive juristic persons, they will be bonding together and call as a single business entity or a single business operator. All right. So this is the definition. Say that it could be two business operators under the same business operator in terms of process, policy, and methods by management, direction, or administration. So together you call them as the single business entity, right? Another possibility is this commanding power, where you have like more than 50% of voting rights. And this is the case of having this equity holding. Or you can control the majority of votes in shareholder meetings. Right? Or you have this power to control an appointment or a revocation of more than 50% of board members in a business operation of another firms. In that case, these two firms should be packed as one single business entity. All right? So when you are the same business entity, your market share will be counted together. And we're going to cover this collusion later, right? So whenever you have this sort of agreement between firms that are falling under the same business entity, then you will not consider them as having this collusive agreement, right? Or if they merge, you will not consider them as merger. It's basically just an internal operation. They don't have to come to the commission and ask for an approval. All right. But this perfect competition is essentially what I covered already, right? In the introduction of microeconomics. So I don't think I will cover them again, but I would like to point out here. This is a very important thing. I talked about SSI, right? I talked about SSI. It's another measure of market power that has been used quite essentially everywhere, this thing. Okay. Well, this is the industry level of market power, which basically say that in that particular market that you have drawn, is there any sign of problems in terms of competition or not? Right? For example, you may have to say, let's say you have two cases, right? You have first scenario and the second scenario, where you have firm, like say, well, two firms, right? Say you have two firms and two firms, firm A and firm B, firm A and firm B. Okay. And you have market share of, well, say 50-50 and 10-90. Do you think which one is more problematic in terms of competition? Which scenario?
The number 2.
Number 2, right? Well, this case is quite straightforward, but I just would like to make a case and show you what SSI index means. All right, what the Herfindahl-Hirschman index means. And let me introduce the third scenario. No. All right, this is the third scenario where supposedly you have 30% and 70%. You could imagine, right, that there must be some sort of like, if you have more firms, it's going to be more and more difficult to point out which one is more problematic than another, right? Because you can have like 30%, like you can have like say 10 firms and different sort of market shares. So it's the more firms you have in the market, the more difficult it is to say that which industry is problematic in terms of the level of competition. But what Herfindahl index trying to do is saying this. One thing that we can know for sure is that, well, we know that the higher the market share you have, the more problematic it is, right? Because if you have one player with quite a substantial market share here, like 90%, it should be quite dangerous, especially if you say that, okay, you have one player at 80%. Suppose you start from 70%, right? And suppose that player's market share increases to like 80%. Well, this is certainly quite a bit of concern. But for the same distance, right, from the same level of change from 80% to 90%, this second 10%, I think, is more worrisome, right? It makes sense, right? You shouldn't treat like from 7 to 80 and 80 to 90 the same. What it means is this: the more market share each player has, you want to put more weight on the latter weight that it has, right? The more, like say, like from 90 to 100%, that is like the place where you want to put the greatest weight on, because that is something that you are more concerned about. And mathematically, do you think what is the best way to capture that? Okay, it's just a math exercise, but the best way to capture that is this. I'll just square it, right? I just square it. because you can imagine like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? But if you want to sort of, if you want to make a difference between 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 to be different, you can square it. I'll show you in the picture. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and they are actually the distance between them are the same, right? But if you square every number, what you will get is like 1, 4, 9, 16. And now you can see, right, that initially this thing seems to be quite the same, right? The distance is just 1. But when you square them, this distance is just 5, but this becomes 7. And you can see now that, and that is like what I meant, right? When I say that like from 70% to 80% should not be treated as the same way as to treat from 80% to 90%. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the intuition behind it. So now you can have a look at this and say, okay, her Frindle index for this is 50 square plus 50 square, which is what?
$5,000.
Yes, 5,000, right? And what about this one? What about this second scenario? 10 square plus 90 square. How much is it? 82, right?
Yes.
And this one is what? 30 square plus 70 square.
5,800.
Yes. Now you see that you can compare these numbers, right? And you can say that the greater the number, the more problematic it may be, right? This is exactly what we call Herfindahl index. This is the SSI. This is the SSI. Well, in the US, I think the number that they use is like 2,500 to say that the market is quite concentrated. Some country use like 1,800, right? Usually they are just these two numbers, like 1,800 or 2,500. But you can imagine, right? What 2,500 means that you have, well, suppose that you have just one player whose market share is 50%. It is guaranteed that your Herfindahl index would exceed that figure, right? You have just one player, which is exactly the case that we use in Thai case, right? Because we say that you would have a dominant player, and that market is quite problematic, right? That it says that if you have one player of 50% market share, which basically means that it guaranteed that the Herfindahl index or HSI index would be greater than 2,500 for sure. But suppose that you have one player like 50%. It doesn't matter if you have any other player, right? Because just this number alone would give you 2,500 already. And this could be anything, right? This could be anything. So you can basically say that, well, I would just set the Herfindahl index at 2,500 as well. It's just a different way to put it. So what is the maximum value of index? What is the maximum when you have a monopolist?
$10,000.
Yes. 10,000, right? Okay, and the minimum is essentially approaching 0. Right? You can have so many players, and each of which has just like 0 point something percent, and you basically have something less than 1. That is possible as well, which basically means the market is super competitive. Right? So I think you're clear now. Like, okay, so what we have done in these two classes are very, very important foundations for what we will discuss afterwards. We have learned how to draw the market. We've learned that there are so many ways in practice that you can use to capture the status of competition within a particular or relevant market. And in practice, well, these three things, right? These three things, sorry, market share, this market entry and buy powers are super important, especially the first one. It has been used a lot. You will see it clearly when we discuss these cases that we will discuss. I think the next one is going to be the first, right? Is this going to be the first class that we discuss cases?
Yes.
Well, let me have a look. Is it?
Yeah, I think so. Because this is the second class for market and market power. So next will be the case on vertical restraints.
Right. So the way we do it is, well, we are one lecture behind, right?
Yes, because last week it's holiday.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I will need to change this, but it's okay. We just continue with the agendas. Should be okay. Okay, so next class we will discuss this vertical restraints. Have you found the online lecture? Or you haven't even looking for it?
You mean it's on YouTube, right?
It is, yes. It's on my the channel channel of mine.
Is your name, right?
Yes, just my. Oh, I can. Well, I can put the link somewhere. I'll send a link to the right. And is there any question about the format? So the thing is, now we have just four of us, right? So basically, I think we probably need to change the instruction a bit, because I said like one case for 3 to 4 students, and last year we got like 11. Now we got 4. Is this okay that we have two groups of you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so at least we have more than one case to discuss. All right. So it's gonna be 2 cases, and we're gonna, which is great. I mean, this is really good. So we can discuss cases in depth. Like last year, I need to spend just half an hour to discuss each case, and sometimes it's a bit too much of a rush. And I think yeah, an hour per case would be great. All right. So you see 4 things, right? Four sort of topics that that you would need to focus. The first is the background of the industry. Okay. What sort of products, and how do they draw the market definition? Then the issues related to what we will discuss next time, which is the vertical restraints. Okay, and then what was the verdict? So I haven't corrected our instruction yet, but as we will be having a lecture on Friday, so I'll expect the case to be sent to me and also to your friends on Wednesday. Would it be okay?
Yes.
I mean before Wednesday.
Yeah.
All right, and we're gonna. Well, I wanna have a look at it, and it would be good if you can find like the full case, which you can actually find, especially the Europe. Europe directory has been done really, really well. So we can have a look at all the facts and we can discuss it, but the structure would be quite similar, trust me. All right, any question?
Just to like be clear, market share and market power are two separate things, right?
Yes. Well, you can link between them, like saying simply market share could be used as a proxy, quite a good proxy for market power. But market power, by definition, is essentially your ability to, well, do things willy-nilly, right? You have an ability to set the price arbitrarily, or you can change the price, increase the price as you wish, or you can lower qualities. Yeah, that's sort of market power, right? You can exercise it. But market share is like an indicator that say that, okay, well, in most cases, the greater the market share, the more likelihood that you would have market power. But it's not definite, right? As we discussed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any questions? The two of you.
No.
All right, so I look forward to the case discussion. It's gonna be great. So yeah, it's gonna be two-way. I don't like to speak one way. Okay. All right, so I'll see you next week. Is it holiday again? No. Is it? Next week is the shit. It's 26, isn't it?
It's Maka Gusha.
This is a holiday at all. I don't know. I'm Christian. I'm not Buddhist.
I think it's a holiday.
Really?
I personally don't mind having class on that day, but I don't know about the rest of the class.
I don't mind too.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Yeah, I mean, we all agnostic or atheist anyway. So is this okay? I mean, I really, really respect your holiday. I think holiday should be spent as holiday. But if you don't mind, then it's okay. Otherwise, I would definitely have to arrange a meetup. Sorry, a makeup class. Yeah. So you're saying?
Oh, I'm okay. I mean, depends on you if you're free on that day.
I think I will. Well, alternatively, what we can do is, do you have anything on Thursday? The two. Wait. Sorry, let me check a bit. Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's have it on Friday maybe, same time. Okay.
10 to 12, right?
10 to 12, yes. But a bit closer to the time, and you have any proposal that okay, we have this time slot available. But just out of curiosity, is there any time slot available, like for the rest of the week? Just probably not for the next session, but is there any time slot that all of you will be available during the week, so so that the makeup could be made?
Thursday evening.
Evening.
I don't think everyone there's class. Let me see.
Oh, this is March.
So like most like from 5 p.m. onwards of every day, there's no class.
From 5 p.m. onwards every day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just will that just apply to you, but not me. I do have BBA on Wednesday. I can't make it. Well, Thursday probably I can do it. I'll finish things at 5:30. Ooh, okay, so you choose between these two slots, 5:30 to 7:30, or Friday, which is a holiday, at the same time. I mean, this is for next week.
For next week.
Or you want to think about it first? I mean, just let me know online. Then you agree among yourself first, and then you just tell me in the line group.
Okay, so it's either Thursday 5:30 or Friday 5:30.
No, Friday is
Friday 10.
10 to noon. Yes.
Okay. We'll let you know in the line group.
Yes. Okay, but cool. That's it. So thank guys. I'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You
ขอบ
too.
คุณครับ
Bye bye.
ขอบคุณครับ